All righty, good morning. How many of you chose the correct seminar the first time and came to my first one? I'm just kidding. It was not that you could pick anyone you want. I don't mean that. Awesome. Well, welcome back. How's the snack? What did you guys get? Chips and salsa? Is there some? It looked like some Rice Krispie treats. I saw some Rice Krispie treats. Okay, awesome. Well, the second one that we're going to be talking about this morning is Jesus really the only way? Now, you guys showed up here at Hume Lake on Sunday? Yeah? So you've been here, what, like 3 days now, right? Okay, how many of you have woken up at least one morning with like the really bad stomach pains, where you're like, oh, that, okay, a few hands coming up. Yeah, that's normally, the camp experience, right? You're going to eat something. Well, before I was a high school teacher, which I teach now, I was a missionary. Right after graduating college, I spent 4 years on the mission field. I was down in the Dominican Republic. When I first got to the Dominican Republic, the missionaries told me, do not eat the street food. You will get sick. So for the first few months I was there, I'd see this delicious looking street food, and I wouldn't eat it because I'm like, hey, I'm going to get sick. Well, one night I go hang out with my friends, a bunch of Dominicans, and they're like, hey, let's go out and eat. I'm like, perfect, let's go. And they take me out, and we end up at a street cart. And I'm like, oh, guys, sorry, I can't eat this. And they're like, yeah, you can. People eat it all the time and never get sick. I'm like, but you're used to it. I'm not. I've never eaten this. This is going to make me sick. And they're like, you'll be fine. Just eat it. So I'm like, okay, what on the menu looks like the safest option? So I looked at the menu. I'm like, oh, hot dog. How can you go wrong with a hot dog, right? Bun, hot dog, you grill it, perfect. So I order a hot dog. Well, this particular person decided that a hot dog would be on a sandwich bun, like a hoagie bun, cut the hot dog in half, put it on the bun, and with lettuce and tomato and everything like that. Makes a sandwich out of the hot dog. Well, now immediately I'm like, okay, this lettuce, how has it been washed? All this kind of stuff, right, comes to mind. But I'm like, fine, I can't be rude, I'm going to eat it. I ate it, and I did not get sick. Oh man, this is a favorite. I was going out almost every night of the week eating street food, and it was delicious. In fact, I started taking mission teams to street vendors, and they loved it. Good stuff. But one morning, towards the end of my first year in the Dominican Republic, I wake up with this terrible stomach ache. And immediately I'm like, oh my goodness, what is wrong with me? There's something wrong with me. So my first thought is I recognize, okay, there's a problem, and there's going to be a cure to that problem, right? There's going to be a way that I can fix the problem. So I go, okay, what did I eat last night? What street food did I eat? And then I realized quickly, okay, I didn't eat any street food last night. In fact, wait, I didn't even eat dinner last night. I know what the problem is. The problem is that I'm hungry, and if I just eat some food, my stomach ache is just hungry, and it's going to go away. So I got out of bed, I sat on my couch, grabbed a bowl of cereal, put on a TV show, and I'm sitting there watching TV, eating my cereal, enjoying the show. I get done eating, and the stomach ache is still there. So quickly, I'm like, all right, what I thought was the problem of me just being hungry is not actually the problem because me eating did not fix the problem. Okay, so what is wrong with me? So I go to my roommate and I'm like, hey, my stomach is really hurting. Could you take me to the hospital? He's like, no, don't overreact. You're fine. This just started like, 30 minutes ago, an hour ago? Just give it some time. I don't know what's wrong with you, but if you just sleep some more, give it some time, the problem is going to go away. Okay, you've been here a lot longer than I have. I'll just go back to bed. So I lay in my bed, and I could not fall back asleep because my stomach hurt so bad. And I lay there for about, 20 minutes. And I got back up, and I said, this is not the problem. Take me to the hospital right now. So he drives me to the hospital. Now, this is my second hospital visit in my first year in the Dominican Republic. The first one was about 2 months earlier. A massive speaker in a metal cage fell over on my leg and just filleted my leg, just ripped the skin off my calf. So I went to the hospital then. But it was such an emergency, I got out of the hospital that night. I had to have surgery to stitch up my leg. And I called my parents. And I said, hey, Mom and Dad, good news, bad news. Good news, I'm out of the hospital. Bad news, I just had a major surgery. Right? And then they kind of freaked out, but then they're like, oh, well, you're out, so you're fine. It's much better. This time I called them on the way to the hospital. I'm like, there's something wrong with me. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm on the way to the hospital right now. So my mom starts to kind of panic and pray. I get to the hospital. By this point, I'm like doubled over in pain. My stomach hurts so bad. So my roommate goes up to the counter and says, hey, there's something wrong with him. So the nurses look at me, they take me, they give me a bed, and they said, oh man, you just have a stomach ache. People get this all the time. So they hooked me up to an IV. They gave me painkillers and said, give it 2 hours, you're going to be fine. For the next 2 hours, I sat there in the hospital bed, screaming and yelling into the pillow because I didn't want to freak everyone else out in the hospital, but I kind of was, because anytime, someone's screaming and yelling for 2 hours, it's kind of like, you can't cover that up with just a pillow. So I'm quickly like, guys, do you not realize it's not just a simple stomach ache? These painkillers are not working. Something is wrong with me. So after 2 hours in the hospital, they're finally like, it does seem like something is wrong with you. But we're not quite sure, so let's give you a blood test. So they gave me a blood test. Took an hour to get the results, and after an hour, they come back and they're like, hey, guess what? There's something wrong with you. And I'm like, yeah, what do you think I've been telling you this whole time? They said, well, but we don't know what it is. So they said, we have an idea. It's your stomach that hurts. So your organs are probably like twisted. There's some problem with your organs. So we're going to give you an ultrasound where we look at your intestines, your organs, and figure out what's wrong with you. Now, I thought ultrasounds were only for women, when they get pregnant. I quickly found out, no, it's not only for women, because there I laid on the bed and they put the gel on my stomach and said, this is going to be cold, and hooked me at the machine. And there on the computer screen, instead of a baby on the screen, was all of my organs. And I sat there and I looked at all of my organs. I say, it's a girl. No, it's not. But the doctor sits there and is like, yeah, everything looks fine. This is not the problem. So I'm like, oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. So they send me back to my bed, where again I lay there for a few more hours, yelling and screaming in pain. After 8 hours, they send a surgeon in. The surgeon comes in, kind of looks me over, takes his fingers, jabs them in my stomach, and I'm like, that's where it hurts. What do you think you're doing? And he goes, it's your appendix. We need to take you to surgery. 1 hour, I'll be back. 1 hour later, the doctor showed up, took me into surgery, and took out my appendix, and everything was fine. That was actually the problem with what was wrong with me. Now, a couple funny stories. So the first surgery I ever had in the Dominican Republic, he just did like local anesthesia around my leg, and just said, as I stitch you, if it hurts, just tell me. So like, I'm sitting there laying, and I'm trying to watch him because I thought it was cool, to see the inside of my leg. And so after trying to like strain and watch, he's like, do you want to sit up? And I'm like, yeah. So I sat there and I was watching him stitch up my leg. Every now and then he'd hit something, I go, and he'd go, I didn't numb that part. And he'd numb it, he'd keep stitching, and all of a sudden, and he's like, I didn't numb that part either. And he just kept, and that's how the whole entire surgery lasted. Now, at one point, the nurse left, and he needed help because he had scrubbed up, he was sterile, and he had to touch something that was not sterile. And he's calling for the nurse, and I'm like, what do you need? I'll help you out. He's like, no, you can't do this. And I'm like, it'll be fine. You need that squirt bottle. I'll grab it. I'll spray my leg off so you can keep going. He's like, no, you should not be doing this. I'm like, I won't tell anybody. I would have told everyone. But he wouldn't let me. Come on. He would not let me assist in my own surgery. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so I go in for my appendix. And, here in the States, they go orthoscopic, where, they take cameras into you. They knock you out. They give you general anesthesia, where you're just completely unconscious. Well, the hospital I went to didn't have the orthoscopic, so they just sliced me wide open, go in. But the second thing is they didn't do general anesthesia. They gave me an epidural, which, again, I thought was only for pregnant ladies when they're giving birth. But I found out that it's not. So not only did I have an ultrasound, I also got an epidural. So they just stuck me in the back, gave me my painkiller. Then 10 seconds later, like, can you lift your legs? And I'm like, and they're like, no, okay, you're good. Don't stress. But I sat there wide awake thinking, that doctor's right there just, in my intestines, cutting out my appendix. Kind of a crazy thought. Now, I wish I could have sat up and watched that one, but they wouldn't let me. But I don't know what it would have been like, looking inside my own stomach. Afterwards, they cut out my appendix. I'm in the hospital. They come walking into my room with a jar of juice, and my appendix is floating in the jar. They said, here is your appendix. You need to take it to get the biopsy done. Now, I did take a picture of that, and I was going to put that in my presentation, but I thought that might be a little bit too much to show you guys a picture of my appendix, so I didn't do it. But Luckily, I couldn't move, so the missionary took my appendix. But here's the whole point of my story, is that I was going through this issue. There was something that was wrong with me, and I knew that there's a problem. For each problem, there's a solution, and my goal was to figure out what is the problem so I could find the correct cure that is actually going to fix my problem. Now, this is something that you have probably done lots of times, and it's something that I did at this point. And there's two important principles that go into this process that we need to understand. Here are the first two foundational things. Number one is that there is or was an objective problem that I could figure out. There was something that was wrong with me, and it was my goal to figure out what that problem is. This gets into the nature of truth. So to give a quick example of this, we have to understand what is truth. Well, truth is either subjective, meaning it changes from person to person based on your beliefs. For example, we're up here at Hume Lake. The best shake at the shake shop, snack shop, is the cappuccino crunch shake. And if you're the type of person who thinks just because they let you match 3 flavors together that that's the best, let me just let you know you're wrong. How many of you matching flavors? How many match this? No, you don't mix flavors. That's wrong. We will need to pray for you afterwards if you think that mixing flavors, because you can't mix things. You can't mix things. You can't mix things together. That's wrong. Cappuccino crunch. End of story. Well, no, that's just my opinion, right? This is a subjective truth. When you think of subjective truths, think of ice cream. That's just my opinion that cappuccino crunch is the best. And if I'm going to try and tell you that you're wrong or anything like this, you're going to be like, no, that's just your opinion. Because this is truth that is based on my beliefs. Another kind of truth is objective truth. When you think of objective truth, think medicine. No one breaks their arm with like the bone sticking out of their skin, goes to the doctor says your arm's broken, and you say, doctor, that's just your opinion. No one says that. Because guess what? Your arm is broken whether you believe it or not. An objective truth is something that is true for all people at all times in all places, whether they believe it or not. I believed my problem was just a stomachache or just that I was hungry, but my belief was wrong. It doesn't matter how much I believed. It was just that I was hungry. It was wrong because it wasn't just hungry. It was my appendix. When I got to the hospitals, the doctors thought it's just a stomachache. Their belief or their thought it's just a stomachache was wrong because it didn't match reality. So objective truth is something that's true for all people at all times and all places, whether they believe it or not. Doesn't matter how much you believe it. I could have been like, I really, 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 really believe it's just a stomachache. Does that change anything? No. What if I ignore it? What if the doctor says, hey, it's your appendix, and I go, I don't believe it, and I just ignore that it's my appendix? Does the problem go away? No, what's going to happen if I ignore it? It's going to get worse, possibly kill me, right? There are consequences. Our beliefs have consequences. Bad beliefs can sometimes have victims. A bad belief about my appendix can cause me to die, can create a victim. We can't just let people believe whatever they want, because bad beliefs can have consequences. So that's another thing. It doesn't matter how much I believe it. It doesn't matter if I can ignore it or not. And lastly, an objective truth is true whether I can prove it to you or not. What if the doctors never found out what my problem was? Does that mean it wasn't my appendix? No. What if I can never prove it was my appendix? Does that mean it wasn't my appendix? No. So a little bit off point, but what about the existence of God? God either exists or he doesn't. It doesn't matter what I believe. My believing God exists does not pop him into existence. And an atheist belief he doesn't exist make God pop out of existence. I once had someone tell me, you believe he exists, so he exists. I believe he doesn't, so he doesn't. Since when do our beliefs make things come in and out of existence? If I believe my laptop is not here right now, does that make it disappear? No, it makes my belief what? Wrong. It doesn't matter if I can prove it either. So with God's existence, now I think that there are really good evidences for the existence of God. But even if I can't prove 100% without a doubt that God exists, it doesn't mean he doesn't. Something is true or not, whether we believe it or not, whether we can discover it or not, and whether we can prove it. It doesn't matter how much we actually believe. So that's the first kind of principle that I think we can learn and see in my story of the appendix that's important to know, is that there is objective truth. Now someone might come along and say, but there is no objective truth. Ask a simple question. Is that true? Is it true that there's no truth? Because if it's true that there's no truth, then there is truth. And if it's not true that there is no truth, then there is truth. This is what we call a self-defeating statement. It contradicts itself. It cannot be true. There is objective truth, and so our idea should be, how do we discover what is true, and then make our beliefs match that, rather than just saying what I believe is what is true. Now, the second thing that the story of my appendix kind of suggests or assumes is, so one, that there's truth, there's a problem that we can discover, and number two is that contradictory problems cannot both be true at the same time. It can't be my appendix and not my appendix at the same time. Right? This is called the law of non-contradiction. It states that opposite ideas cannot both be true in the same way and in the same sense. To say A is B and A is not B cannot both be true. It's like saying the earth is round and the earth is not round. Can these statements both be true at the same way and in the same sense? No. This breaks the law of non-contradiction. The law of non-contradiction doesn't help us discover what's true. But once we know what's true, anything that contradicts it is therefore false. If we know that the earth is round, to say it's a triangle is false. To say it's a square is false. To say it's not round is false. And we recognize this. If you're doing math and one person gets the answer 3, someone else gets the answer 9. If 3 is true, that means 9 is false. If 9 is true, then 3 is false. Or you're both wrong, and it's a different answer. It doesn't matter how much you believe it. I could go in my bank and believe there's $1 million sitting in my account, but when I go to take $1 million out of my bank, what's the teller going to tell me? No, you only have like $51. But I really believe there's $1 million. I want there to be $1 million. Does that change the truth? No. Right? So it's an objective truth. They can't both be true at the same time. There's not $50 and $1 million at the same time. It's one, the other, or neither. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's the two things. It's not my appendix and not my appendix. If it is my appendix, then to say anything else is going to be false. That your problem was just a stomachache. That's false. Got it? Okay, perfect. You guys are awesome. Okay, now, how then does this apply, rather than just to my appendix and my surgery story, how can this apply to all of us? Instead of asking the question, what's wrong with me, let's instead ask the question of what's wrong with us. Now, the way that you answer this question is going to change based on your worldview. What is a worldview? A way that you view the world. Everyone views the world differently, and everyone is going to have a different answer for something. Now, I teach comparative religions and worldviews. It's one of my subjects I teach. And as much as I have studied religions, I've yet to find a religion and a worldview that says there's nothing wrong with us. Everyone thinks that there's something wrong with us. Now, just curious, how many of you do you think could name one of the 6 major worldviews, ways of thought? Anybody? Anybody know? Yeah? Islam is one? Any other options? Any other thoughts? Yeah? Buddhism would fall under a different view that kind of incorporates more than just Buddhism. Hinduism and Buddhism would both fall under what's called new spirituality, or kind of new age movement. What else? What other thoughts? Yeah? What's that? Psychology would be a field of study that is influenced by your worldview. Yeah? Judaism and Christianity would both kind of fall under the Judeo-Christian worldview. Catholicism would kind of fall under a Christian worldview. Atheists would fall under a secular worldview. Okay, here's what I'm going to help you out with, guys. There's tons of religions. There's tons of ways that people think about the world. And to try to understand every single one, you're going to go crazy. I once had someone say, well, how do we ever even start? Well, here's a start. I think that almost every worldview, or everyone's worldview, is going to fall under these 6, or at least a variation of these 6 views. I'm going to put up here secularism, Marxism, Islam, postmodernism, new spirituality, and Christianity. I think that you could probably, if you learn these 6, that you could understand and be able to point to what people think and say, oh yeah, that falls under that view, or at least a variation of it. Now, I spent an entire school year teaching these six worldviews to my students. And then how they affect psychology, history, philosophy, theology, biology, ethics, law, politics, how your worldview affects these things. So we have 10 to 15 minutes, so we're not going to be able to do that. But we're going to look at this one question. What is wrong with us? Well, secular worldview is going to say this. What's wrong with us is that there's too much religion in the world, and instead the problem is going to be, or the cure is going to be give people more freedom. I don't know how many people, I went to UC Berkeley last week, I don't know how many people I had say, it's the religious oppression that creates all the problems. Religion is the cause of most wars. Religion is what tells people you have to do this and tries to oppress people. And if you just get rid of religion, give people freedom, then all of our problems go away. Now you can see this taking place in our culture today. When it comes to the abortion debate, what do they say? The woman should have the right to choose. Give them freedom to make the choice that they want to make. When it comes to homosexuality, same-sex marriage was legalized last year, right? Or 2 years ago. 2 years ago, right? They should have the right to marry who they want. You should have the choice. Don't let religion come and tell people what they have to do. So here's what the secularist is going to say. This is the atheist, the non-religious person. The problem is that all the religion in the world, if we can rid the world of religion, then, and give people freedom, everything's going to become better. Marxist worldview comes along and says, well, no, it's more of an economic problem. The problem is that people have private ownership of their goods. And if the government steps in, takes away all private property, and makes everyone equal, then everyone is going to stop being greedy. Because greed is just because you have stuff, and someone has more stuff. So you have the 1% that are wealthy, the 99% that are poor. If we take away from the 1%, give to the 99, make everyone equal, then our problems are going to go away. It's an economic situation that we're facing. Islam comes along and says, well, no, actually, the problem is that we are in rebellion against Allah, and the cure is that we need to submit to Him. Now, how many people are Muslims in here? 0. That's what I thought. Here's what the problem is. Islam believes that we were born Muslims. You were born a Muslim. You were born a Muslim. I was born a Muslim. We were all born Muslims. We're not Muslims anymore, so we are currently in rebellion against Allah. And that's why there are so many problems. So in order to fix it, we either through free choice or through force, we are going to force everyone to freely or through force choose to submit to Allah, and then our problems are going to go away. That's why Islam's goal is a global Islamic state, theocracy. So that's what they would say. Postmodernism does not believe that there's any objective truth. All truth is relative. So they would say the problem is that you think that there's actually truth. You think that there's something that's true, and you try to oppress that on other people. You Christians think that there's this way that the world works. The problem is you think that there's truth. You are deluding yourself. You're delusional. And so if you recognize that all truth is relative, that there is no objective truth, let people believe and think and do what they want, then all of our problems go away. New spirituality. This is where you can find Hinduism and Buddhism and the New Age movement. They're going to say the problem is that we think that we're individuals. You think that you're a different person than me. And so you have your own thoughts, your own opinions, and that's creating all this problem. Instead, if you recognize that we are all one, we are all connected to this spiritual kind of this God consciousness, that we're all divine, we have the truth within us, then our problems go away. Some would go so far to say that the physical world is an illusion, that your pain and your sickness, it's all an illusion. If you would just think that you're not sick, your sickness goes away. If you fix the way that you think and realize that you're one with everything that exists, that you're not your own individual, then all your problems disappear. In fact, even one person says that if you just think good thoughts and you recognize your oneness, then riches will come your way because the universe wants to make you rich. And so you become rich by just thinking those things. That's what they would say is the problem and the cure. Then Christianity comes along and says, no, it's actually the problem is that there's sin. There's human beings that have free will. They've freely chosen to do terrible things. And the cure for it is Jesus. So, is it just our opinion versus everybody else? Is it just my belief as a Christian versus the Muslim's belief? No one can know what's right? Or maybe everybody's right. That's what our culture says. Religious pluralism. Everyone can just believe whatever they want and they're all right. Is that possible? No. Why? He can't be Allah and Yahweh, and he can't exist here and pantheism here, but then also not exist here and here. And then he does whatever he wants in this one, postmodernism, because there's no truth, it's whatever you believe, right? God can't exist, not exist. This breaks the law of non-contradiction. If one of these is true, then the rest are false, because they're contradictory views. Well, we have 5 to 10 minutes. Let me give a quick rundown of how I think that we can accurately go through this and come to a good conclusion. First, secularism. Is this really the problem? I don't think so, because every single group of people I've ever asked, and I asked them this question, if there was more human freedom, if people could do whatever they want without the problem of consequence, no police, no laws, no nothing, and let people do whatever they want, would people make better or worse decisions? Worse. We see this happen over and over and over again. You can even look at countries that are atheistic countries, like China, like Soviet Russia. They did some terrible things. Mao, the Chinese leader in the 1960s, is responsible for 40 to 60 million people that he killed, that were killed under him. You know, in Soviet Russia, there's another like 20 million under Joseph Stalin, right? There's these mass, terrible events that happen in these atheistic communities because when you don't have a God, you lose human value. And people start taking advantage of people. And so this doesn't seem to fix the problem. This makes the problem worse when you get rid of religion. We've tested this and seen that's what happens. What about Marxism? Well, this has also been tested. When you take away everybody's private property and try to make everyone equal, someone else rises to power. Greed is not the result of just having stuff. Greed is something that's inside of human beings that we're constantly trying to get things that we don't have. This again has been put to the test in many countries and failed because it doesn't fix the problem of just trying to make everyone equal. Plus, you could ask the question, maybe we can be equal as far as a financial standpoint, but what about equality of ideas? Equality of strength? Equality of size? Are we all equal size? No. Are we all equal strength? No. Are we all have the same ideas? No. Right, we're not equal in almost every single way. So that doesn't seem to work. What about Islam? Is it really that we're rebelling against God and then Allah and we have to submit to Him? Well, I think that Islam actually points to Christianity and says that Jesus is the only way. Now, why do I say that? The Quran makes two brief statements, and we can go into this more later. Again, I'll be here at 3:30 this afternoon for Q&A. Quran makes two interesting statements. First statement, 1, the words of Allah can never be changed or corrupted. They will always remain the same and always be true. Second, the Bible, the New Testament, the revelation of Jesus Christ are the accurate words of Allah. So the Quran itself says that the gospel is accurate and a revelation of Allah, and then it also says Allah's words can never be changed. And now there are other parts in the Quran that say you should put everything to the test that you hear here and test it against the New Testament. Now what Muslims will say is, well, that was corrupted. Well, the Quran says that it can't be corrupted because it's the revelation of Allah. So actually the Quran and Islam points back to Christianity, so I think that we can rightly cross that one out. Postmodernism, as I showed you before, this is just self-refuting. To say that there is no objective truth, you have to make an objective truth statement, so we can easily cross that one out. New spirituality. Is the physical world just an illusion, and our problem is that we haven't recognized our oneness, we just need to think happy thoughts? What happens when you go to a friend who's gone through a very terrible, horrible, evil event? Do you walk up to them and say, just think happy thoughts and all your problems will go away? No. We recognize that sin, pain, suffering, these terrible evils, this is not just the result that I think that I'm an individual. It's not just an illusion that will go away once I think happy thoughts. Plus, this cannot be tested. One of my professors once asked a Buddhist monk, how could you actually know that reincarnation is true and that Buddhism is true, that you will one day reach enlightenment? He said, it would take about 10 to the 50th trips around the circle of samsara, the rebirth, death, rebirth, reincarnation, in order to know that it's actually true. It can't be tested. It's something that we just have to hope might be true. But it also does not accurately depict the pain, evil, and suffering that we see in the world. When you look at Christianity, on the other hand, I think that the problem accurately depicts the problem. The problem is caused mostly by human evil. Is the result of most evil in our culture is human evil. And it also says, Christianity says, that the pain and the evil and that you feel and experience, it's real. It's not an illusion, but it's real and it's something that we deal with. But that Jesus came down into our pain and came with it. Jesus then came and said, I am the cure. I am the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Well, how do we know that what Jesus said is true? Is it just some random statement like every other religious leader said? Well, no, Jesus proved it by dying and rising from the dead, confirming that the things that he says is actually true. It's not just something that we have to take on faith, but it's something Jesus said and then did miracles and his resurrection to confirm the things he said, so that he put it to the test and showed that his words passed the test. We can actually know that what he said is true, making this, I think, the actual cure to our problem. Now, there's something else that's unique about these 6 worldviews. Something different between the first 5 and Christianity. We don't have a lot of time. Can anyone see what's common in the first 5 that's different from Christianity? Yeah, in the back?
It's all about what the person does.
Yeah. Yeah, look at that. The first 5 is all about how I can fix myself. Christianity comes and says, no, we can't fix ourselves. We need Jesus to fix us. There are some problems I can't fix. I can't fix my own appendix. It's interesting, though, is that takes humility, right? To say, I can't do this. I need help. The other ones is this, no, we can do it. We can fix ourselves. And what you see in all the other worldviews and religions, it's all about how I can do it. We're the great people. Christianity comes along and says, no, we're not. We need help. We need a Savior to come help us because we can't fix it on our own. Now, the question of what is right and wrong is a little bit more crucial because the problem is a lot worse than our appendix. Right? We see this problem of pain, suffering, and evil every day around us. This is something that we should actually think about and we should care about. Because our friends, if they're not Christians, if they don't understand this, one day their life is going to be end, and there's going to be serious consequences for not understanding the truth. Just ignoring the problem is going to have serious effects on everyone around us. If I ignore my appendix, it's going to wind up killing me. We should actually care enough, not only about our own life, to want to investigate it ourselves, but then care enough about every single person around us. Because every person living here on this earth is a valuable human being created in the image of God. And to keep the truth from that person is not the loving thing to do. The loving thing is to share the truth, but give them truth with grace. You don't walk up and say, you're a horrible person, you're going to hell. But you help them understand what is actually true. If you love them, you help them see the way that reality really is. Now, a couple resources for you guys as we wrap up here. One quick thing before I finish, I forgot to say. Maybe we've had good lives. Maybe you haven't experienced real pain, real suffering, real evil in your life. I've never seen anyone close to me ever pass away, but I know one day it's going to happen. This is kind of an extreme statement, but it's something my professor said many times, and I think it's true. I know it's true. But he says, the only thing that's going to keep you from watching every single person around you die from pain, from sickness, disease, from murder, is your own death by old age, natural causes, disease or murder. We're going to experience these things, but are we lining our views up rightly so that we know that we have the truth and we know that we can reach God and helping other people see that same thing? So this fall is the Student Rethink Apologetics Conference from Stand to Reason, representing the shirt. This is a chance for, last year is all about Jesus. Who is Jesus? Helping students understand these deep core issues, things like abortion, all that kind of stuff. Last year, 1,800 people in attendance in Costa Mesa in September. So I want to encourage you to check this out. Tell your youth pastor, people about it. The last thing is you can stay connected with me. I'm always trying to be available to students, to where if you're in conversations and someone presents an objection to you, you know where to go. You know where you can find answers. My website, and then also a lot of other websites to find answers to the questions you have. The last thing I will say is this, the Apologetics Study Bible for Students. You can find it on Amazon. This has over 130 commonly asked questions that have been answered in here. One that I had the privilege of writing is, does God send good people to hell? Questions like that. Questions like, can we smoke weed? Questions like, does God exist? Questions like creation, evolution. So I'd highly recommend getting this, along with, it's filled with lots of evidence, archaeological stuff, and it's a great resource. So with that being said, we're out of time. Have an awesome rest of your day. I'll be back here at 3:30 for the Q&A. Have a good rest of your day. See you guys later.